Three, two, one, here we go. Rainman's Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. Hey everybody, it's the Rain Man. Just want to give a quick shout out to everybody watching. Thank you very much. I know you're going to find this next raindrop thought-provoking. I feel very strongly about these subjects, and I know you do too. So go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. That way we can continue bringing you great content in the future. So thanks again for being a part of Rain Man's Take, and enjoy this raindrop. Hey everybody, it's the Rain Man coming at you today with a raindrop. I wanted to give you my take on a couple of polls and a couple of interviews I saw recently regarding the mainstream media and sort of the state of the mainstream media today. And the first one I wanted to touch on was an interview that MSNBC's Katie Tur gave, in which she states basically flat out that people don't trust us. They don't believe us what we're saying anymore. And what she was referencing a Gallup poll that came out recently that showed the trust in the media was at an all-time low. She lamented in this article or this interview that people don't trust us. And she questioned if the way she was doing her job was actually doing more harm than good, which I found very interesting. To quote her in this interview, she says, "There was just a Gallup poll out today that shows that the trust in media, in newspapers and television, is hitting an all-time low. People don't trust us. They don't believe us. And it makes me wonder if this job, as I'm currently doing it, is effective, but if it's doing more harm than good. I don't have a good answer for that. So those thoughts linger in the back of my mind. They linger, though, because I do love it and I do think it's important. And I hope to find a better way to communicate with people." And another quote in this interview that I also found very interesting is she basically came out and said that cover former President Donald Trump and his tweets. And she basically said that it made it seem like we were totally out to get Donald Trump. And in my view, I think they were. And I think that shows itself in, I think, if I remember this correctly, there was something like during President Trump's term in office, he had something like 93% of the news about him was negative. And Tur basically states regarding that she thinks that hurt their credibility in the long run. And quite frankly, I agree with her. What still bothers me about this whole thing is that I don't think that the mainstream media is going to change, even when you see polls like this that show just how low the confidence is in our current state of media. And I use as an example of that I don't believe they're going to change anytime soon. The example that I bring up is the Pulitzer Prize that was given to the two New York Times journalists who were first in on the whole Russia collusion story with President Trump. And over the last couple of years, that collusion narrative has been completely debunked as a hoax. And as of today, the Pulitzer Prize they have not taken back those prizes given to those two journalists, even though that story has been completely debunked. So that just shows me that I don't think the mainstream media is recognizing just how bad it is with people's opinions of them. And to drive home this point, according to that Gallup poll, America's confidence in two facets of news media, newspapers and television news, has fallen to an all-time low. Just 16% of U.S. adults now say they have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in newspapers, and only 11% in television news. What I find interesting is that the results of these polls don't seem to stop the hardcore believers on television. A lot of these shows, it isn't even news. It's opinion, and it's given in an echo chamber. There was an article out recently by Tyler Durden over at Zero Hedge on July 18th. He was discussing a recent Pew Research poll that came out. And in this poll, a majority of U.S. journalists say every side doesn't always deserve equal coverage in news reporting. And this goes to my original thesis about why I started RAINMAN'S Take in the first place, and that is you cannot believe anything you hear or read. You've got to go deeper into it. There are narratives out there, and the responsible citizens need to get themselves informed on what's going on both sides of any issue. And this Pew Research poll actually reflects that. That reflects that polarization that we're currently seeing in the mainstream media, which results in this lack of confidence that the citizens have in our current media. Going back to the poll, just 30% of left-leaning journalists say every side deserves equal coverage. And that puts them sharply at odds with the U.S. adult, or the average U.S. adult. 76% of whom agree that journalists should always strive to give every side equal coverage. And the article goes on to state, and this is, these things I find very, very interesting, and it seems obvious to me, but seeing it out on this article really kind of drives it home. And that is that among journalists who say their outlet's audience leans left, just 30% embrace a steady devotion to equal coverage, compared to 57% of those whose audiences they say lean to the right. The article goes on to say that there's every reason to think that things are going to get worse in the coming years. And the reason why he stated that was this research poll found that younger journalists place less importance on equal coverage than older journalists. Just 37% of all journalists up to age 29 years old think equal coverage is something they should always aim for. To quote the article, that's no surprise given cancel culture's growing grip on college campuses. Campuses led by faculty and administrators who not only tolerate speakers being shouted down by mobs, but actually punish people who express ideas that are counter to leftist orthodoxy. Continuing, hostility to these ideas is deemed virtuous by those who think these views cause harm. Journalists infected with that warped mindset would think it's a disservice to give all sides equal coverage. And then to finish this idea off, there was a telling quote recently by Don Lemon in an interview that he gave. During this interview, he basically mocked the idea that, quote unquote, we want to hear what the Republican arguments are. And that's troublesome, especially because of the fact that Don Lemon has a primetime show on CNN. During this interview, he goes on to further state that we sit around and we talk about these things, and we want to give this false equivalence to Democrats and Republicans. That is not where we are right now. Republicans are doing something that is very dangerous to our society, and we have to acknowledge that. We must acknowledge that as journalists, because if we don't, we are not doing our jobs. Now, when you hear somebody like Don Lemon say that, you better question it. It seems more prevalent on the left, as those polls have currently shown. It seems like these shows, they don't even want to have a conversation. They don't even want to have a debate about or a debate on these issues. So when I hear a guy like Don Lemon say something like that, it reminds me of an experience my wife and I had a few years back, and I wish that more people would do this, especially the people in the current mainstream media. I think it would go a long way towards more civil debate and more civil discourse about issues. But this particular instance that I'm referring to, a couple of years ago, we were traveling. We were in Spokane, Washington, and we were just kind of cruising around the town just to try to get an idea of what the city was all about. And we went into this art gallery, and the artist just happened to be behind the counter. So we struck up a conversation with this gentleman. And during the course of the conversation, and I don't remember how we got onto it, but basically the topic of, how can we, as a society, with as polarized as we are right now, how can we get back to being able to have a conversation with somebody that you may or may not agree with in terms of your view on issues? And he brought up a very interesting point, and this is why I wanted to tell you about this. He basically said, I wish more people would look in the mirror and ask themselves, what if I'm wrong? What if my position is wrong? And I found that fascinating, because that's basically exactly what I'm proposing and a proponent of here on RAINMAN'S Take, and that is, look at both sides. That's what I'm trying to do here at RAINMAN'S Take, is get both sides of an issue, understand where both sides are coming from, and then you bounce that off of what your person is and what your personal views are, and ask that tough question: am I just being lazy and disagreeing with this, or have I thought this through? I agree with the guy. I think if more people did that, and sometimes I'm guilty of not doing that as well, but I think the more we can do that, the more we can, at the very least, be understanding of the opposite side of an issue that we may believe in. So I found that a very interesting experience, and I wanted to just kind of let you know that. Okay, so getting back to the whole lack of trust in the mainstream media right now. I read this article a couple of days ago about NPR still trying to control the narrative of false information and disinformation. And apparently, this fall, they're going to be putting together a disinformation reporting team ahead of the midterm elections. And I found that ironic, because they themselves are guilty of disinformation, and I used the example of Hunter Biden's laptop. If you remember, in 2020, NPR, like most of the mainstream liberal media outlets, quickly dismissed the New York Post report about Hunter Biden's infamous laptop as disinformation, even putting out a newsletter telling readers that they don't want to waste our time on stories that are not real stories. And now, as we all know, that was in fact a true story. And the disinformation was the fact that they didn't even cover it, and they still refused to cover it. And I find that very interesting, because that laptop is still, the story about it was true, and the contents of that laptop are still putting out newsworthy stories. And yet, if you only watch NPR, you would never know that, because still to this day, they refuse to even make a correction about the laptop story. And they actually just don't even talk about it, period. I want to confess something right now to you guys. I got lazy recently and didn't follow my own rules of questioning everything and digging deeper. And I fell into this trap with the just heartbreaking story of that 10-year-old girl in Ohio who was raped and became pregnant. And as an aside, I should probably do an episode on my position on abortion. But as it pertains to this story about this little girl, I can say that there absolutely should be an option for rape victims, regardless of how pro-life the state is. I find it completely insane that a baby girl, 10 years old, should be forced, based on very strict abortion laws, to actually go through with a pregnancy. And a couple of days after the story kind of broke, I also listened to another politician, and I don't remember the state he was from, but it was a pro-life state. And this guy basically said that regardless of circumstance or age, every pregnancy should go to full term and result in a birth of a child. And I just thought that was completely insane. Anyway, I didn't do much of a deep dive into the story, primarily because it went political almost immediately. But there was also a couple of kind of bizarre issues with the way the story unfolded. And in particular, I cite that right after the event, I found the fact that none of the law enforcement agencies in Ohio had heard about the case. And that just seemed very odd to me. And when it finally did did come out that it was true, and the rapist was arrested, the Ohio Attorney General came out and said that the girl didn't need to leave Ohio to get the abortion based on exemptions written into their law. And at the time, I assumed he meant that there was a carve out for rape victims, and I just kind of left it at that. And I was having this conversation with my wife the other night. We were watching NPR, and they were discussing the case, and she played one of my tricks on me. We were arguing about it. And I said, she didn't have to leave because there's a carve out for rape victims. And what does she do? She pulls out her phone, pulls up the Ohio law, and it shows me that there was nowhere in that law does it state that that's an exemption carve out for rape victims. And I just taken at face value because it was stated and promoted all over some of the news stations that I watch. And so I did not do my due diligence on that. And so it just reinforced to me that I need to practice what I preach. And that is to question everything, especially when there are questions in my mind right from the get-go. I should have done that and I didn't. And my wife called me out. So that's my confession. I need to work on it just as hard as everybody else does. Again, this is a tragic example of how politics quickly blows up everything it touches. And basically what my wife and I determined that what he was saying and how it was being presented was misleading because, yes, technically he was arguing that, yes, she could have had the abortion in Ohio because the case would have fallen into one of the exemptions dealing with the health of the mother. But if gone down that road, the process and the court filings would have taken so long that I'm sure the girl probably would have given birth to the child. So the move to Indiana was decided for the health of the girl. And quite frankly, I agree with that. This is a tragic story all the way around, let alone the horrible reality of a 10-year-old girl actually going through a pregnancy and giving birth, and the long-term emotional and physical impacts that would have had on her. She's going to have those anyway. I mean, she's a victim of child rape, and I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. It's a horrible, horrible situation all the way around. So, kind of to close out the episode today, obviously trust in the mainstream media is very low right now, and it doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. So it's imperative that we all question everything that we're being told and to do our research and understand both sides of issues, because we must remember that there are competing narratives out there. And the goal of most of these mainstream media programs is to manipulate our emotions in order to promote that, whatever their particular narrative is. And we need to guard against that. And I fell victim to not practicing what I preach. And so I will do better. And moving forward, I think the order of the day needs to be, don't trust anything you hear on the media or what you read. Research it, do your own research, and then make your informed decision from there. So that is it for now. I appreciate your time. I'll close out like I always do. If you're in the military, the police departments, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Stay safe. This is the Rain Man. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, observations on the world we live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.